Township Parsippany-Troy Hills Township Council Agenda Meeting, July 9, 2013. Public invited, public participation. Meeting called to order by myself at 7:30 p.m. Please rise for a flag salute. Mr. Nelson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Here he comes. Here he comes.
I'm giving it 30-second delayed roll call.
Double time.
Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Here.
Mr. DePiero. Mr. Ferrara.
Here.
Mr. Nelson.
Here.
Mr. Stanton.
Here. Others present: Mayor Barbario, Jasmine Lim, Business Administrator; Paul Cosarelli, Assistant Business Administrator; John Inglesino, Esquire, Township Attorney; Yancy Wazirmas, Township Clerk. Purpose of this meeting is to set the agenda for the regular Township Council meeting, July 16, 2013. Formal action may or may not be taken.
Adequate statement of this notice, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Law by filing the notice in the office of the Township Clerk and by posting the meeting notice on the bulletin board at the municipal building on December 10, 2012, where it has remained posted since that date. A legal notice appeared in both the Daily Record on December 14, 2012, and the Star Ledger on December 13, 2012, and it was forwarded by fax to other local newspaper and local radio stations on December 10, 2012. In addition, adequate notice of the location change of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Law by filing the notice in the office of the Township Clerk and by posting the notice on the bulletin board at the municipal building on June 21, 2013, where it has remained posted since that date. A legal notice appeared in the Daily Record on June 26, 2013. It was forwarded by fax to the Star Ledger, Parsippany Life, and local radio station on June 21, 2013. Note: council meetings are videotaped and air on cable public access channel 21 at 12 p.m. on Sundays, and are also available for viewing at www.parsippany.net.
Ordinances, second reading, public hearing. Everything set for next week?
Yes, Council President. The only item is ordinance number 2013:21. There will be a resolution to rescind that ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Status of adopted ordinances. Ordinance 2013:10, adopted date 6/18/2013, Mayor's action 6/19/2013, effective date 7/9/2013. 2013:11, adopted date 6/18/2013, Mayor's action 6/19/2013, effective date 7/14/2013. 2013:12, adopted date 6/18/2013, Mayor's action 6/19/2013, effective date 7/14/2013. 2013:13, failed 6/18/2013. 2013:14, adopted date 6/18/2013, Mayor's action 6/19/2013, effective date 7/14/2013. 2013:15, adopted date 6/18/2013, Mayor's action 6/19/2013, effective date 7/9/2013. 2013:16, adopted date 6/18/2013, Mayor's action 6/19/2013, effective date 7/9/2013. Ordinance 2013:17, adopted date 6/18/2013, Mayor's action 6/19/2013, effective date 7/9/2013. Discussions, reminders, scheduled meeting, 7/16/2013, 7:30 p.m. Regular meeting at the Parsippany Hills High School, public invited, public participation. August 6, 2013, 7:30 p.m. Agenda meeting, Town Hall, public invited, public participation. Note, the meetings moved back from 8/13/2013. Administration? Everything set for next week?
Yes.
Okay. Engineer report, July 2013, Mr. Creepy.
Engineering report, there's no change with the exception of the last one, major soil moving permit extension, K&K Developers, Block 98, lots 22 and 23. The planning board granted a one-year extension to the major soil moving permit until August 18th, 2014. This office has no objection to the extension and recommends the Township Council extend the permit and agreement until August 18th, 2014 by resolution.
Okay, all those in favor of extending? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Applications, resolution approving fireworks display, Mount Tabor Children's Day celebration 2013, then place-to-place transfer expansion premises, ShopRite license 1429-44-010-008, 808 Route 46, Parsippany, New Jersey. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to open this up to the public.
Make a motion.
Second.
Hold on one second.
Can you hold on a second, Council?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Council President, I met with the Chief of Police, and I'm going to make a recommendation, but it's up to the council. If we can hire 3 police officers at level 1 and 2 at... two at higher levels, trying to get up to the 5 that we put in the budget. But I'm asking for, not permission, but I'm asking for your blessing.
During the budget meetings, we had discussed hiring 5
At level
at the
1.
probationary level, and we have the opportunity to hire someone from another town, and then we understand that the sheriff's office is maybe letting some people go, and we would like to be able to hire a sheriff's officer if
When do I start?
we-
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, Mayor, it was hard to hear. You said 3
At level 1, entry, probationary.
and then 2 at a higher? Okay.
Okay, what's higher now? What step? What's the...
Probably at step, let me say, maybe third year and 5th year or 4th year. It really depends. I don't, the one that we've already interviewed, I'm not sure which step he would be coming in at. I believe the sheriff's officers are already in their 70s. That's my understanding. Is
Oh,
that-
definitely not Morris County.
No?
Not the ones that they're talking with.
No? Oh,
Jasmine, is there, do you have any idea of how many, or educated guess on how many officers are going to be leaving by the end of the year?
By the end of the year?
Yeah.
Well, how many are eligible?
We don't know the exact number.
people
No,
are leaving.
we don't even know.
There-
Yeah, but you can only make assumptions, and I don't want to make assumptions unless it's factual.
But it's probably at least 5. right?
At least 5.
Okay, can we actually get a step guide so we could check it out and bring this back up for next week? Table it for 1 week?
Sure,
Is that okay?
yeah.
Yes.
All right, I'll make a motion to table for next week. Second by Mr. Karifi. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes. Okay, Mayor, good?
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Inglesino?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Council President. 2 reports. First of all, an issue had been brought to, I believe, your attention and to my attention by Mr. Mesmer concerning the applicability of the hotel tax to boarding homes. And I first want to commend Mr. Mesmer and thank him for his thoughtfulness and for bringing this issue to our attention and for working with us in trying to further develop it. What I'd like to do is report to the council sort of where we are on the issue and go from there. Under applicable state law, it's NJSA 40:48F3, permits municipalities to tax hotels. It's a 3% tax on the room. Boarding homes are included within the definition of hotels under the state law. And the key is you have to stay for under 90 days. If you're staying in a boarding home for over 90 days, then you would not be eligible, the home would not be eligible to be taxed. But if you're there for under 90 days, then there's a tax that can be imposed. Now, Parsippany, back in 2003, actually enacted a hotel tax in August of 2003. And the way that works is that every year, the town sends a list of all hotels down to the New Jersey Division of Taxation. And the New Jersey Division of Taxation expects each establishment to file monthly tax returns with the Division of Taxation and remit payment to the Division of Taxation. It works similar to the way the sales tax works, and it's a self-reporting system. And then what happens is that the New Jersey, the Treasury Department, then sends a check to the town on a quarterly basis, or at least periodically, which represents the town's 3% tax. So the tax is actually collected by the state and sent back to the town. Now, if the tax isn't paid, the town can place a lien on the property, but the town does not have the power to foreclose a lien under state statute. So the issue becomes, how can we include boarding homes as part of this effort to collect the tax on hotel rooms? And again, under the statute and under your ordinance as enacted, boarding homes would count as hotel rooms. There are a couple of challenges, though, in implementing this program. One is to identify the boarding homes that are present in the town. How many are there? Where are they? How do you identify them? How do you account for them, register them, and include them in the list of hotels that goes down to the state? And then the second challenge is really how do you enforce the payment and the collection of the tax? Again, under the state law, the town only has the power to put a lien on the property. It does not have the power to foreclose the lien. And what that means essentially is a lien goes on the property, and at the time the property owner wants to either refinance the property or sell the property, in order to clear title, they would have to pay the town, and that's when the town would get paid. You have an ordinance that requires all owners of rental properties to register with the local Division of Housing. That ordinance does not currently specify the requirement that boarding homes would have to register. So one measure that could be taken is that your existing ordinance that requires the registration of rental properties could be expanded to specifically include boarding homes. That's one action that you could take if you wanted to move in this direction. We're also looking at ways that you could strengthen the ordinance to better encourage registration, because that's where you may be able to assess penalties on property owners who don't register if they're required to do so, and that may provide an incentive for boarding home owners to register with the Division of Housing, and that would then enable the township to be able to include those establishments in the list that they send down to the state, so that those properties are then accounted for. Again, in order to make this cost efficient, I think you have to have some sense of how many properties, how many boarding homes there are in town, because it's going to require, manpower in the Division of Housing, to implement this program if you wanted to do it. But if there are a lot of boarding homes in the town, it could be cost effective, and it could be a source of some revenue for the town. And it could also serve as a way of just, having a better understanding of sort of what's going on in the community, so that, if and when issues arise, there's just a better knowledge as to, what various properties are being used for. So that's sort of a status report of where we are on that issue. And at this point, I think we really, at least my office, needs some further policy guidance from the council before we would, propose doing anything further. And again, if we were to do anything further, it would be to expand the registration requirement under the ordinance to include boarding homes and to include a penalty for failure to register. And then I think that there are some additional actions that would probably have to be taken on the administrative side in order to administrate the implementation of the program.
Can the council get an actual list of how many boarding homes we have that are registered as of now?
I don't know that you have any that are, you may not have any that are registered. If you do, you probably have very few, because at the moment, there's arguably not a requirement to register boarding homes. So I think we'd have to give some thought as to how you would go about identifying the boarding homes that are in the community. I'm not sure exactly how you would go about doing that, but certainly citizen participation would seem to be an important element in doing that, but there would have to be a way in which you could inventory and account for, the boarding homes that are in town. And again, we're not talking about people who rent out their homes for periods of time. We're talking about, transitionary housing for, 90 days or less. That's the category that we're talking about. We're not talking about people who rent homes to families for extended period of times. We're not talking about group homes where folks are there and that's their permanent residence. We're talking about, transient housing.
Good.
Okay, that's...
Council President?
Yes.
If I may.
Yes.
Before we go changing the ordinance, I would like the administration to come up with some type of an estimate of what we're talking about. How many homes are we talking about? We're talking about 50 homes, 100 homes, 500 homes? I mean, at least get a ballpark figure so we know if it's worthwhile to go into this effort.
I know I asked for a list, I got
Well-
4.
Well, you won't get a list because, as our attorney said, we don't keep those statistics right now, but the administration could certainly look into it and come up with an estimate of how many they think fall into this category.
We will try to come up with an estimate, but it's really going to be based primarily on complaints that we've received in the past. And I'm not sure that's a good, that's going to give us a good estimate. I think what the attorney mentioned earlier, that we're going to need some help from the residents, in terms of calling in houses that they believe are occupied as transient boarding homes.
It'd be just nice to, before we go changing the ordinance, to have some idea of the impact.
We agree. Because, enforcing it is going to be an issue. We want to make sure that we have the staffing capability to enforce if we do, in fact, amend that ordinance.
Okay.
Mr. Council President?
Okay.
Can I just ask the attorney a question about it? If they're a registered boarding house now, are they supposed to get inspections just like apartments when they become vacant? Is housing required to come over every time there's a vacancy on a short-term?
No, as I indicated, right now, there's a requirement for rental properties, but your ordinance does not specifically include boarding homes. And again, we're not talking about rentals, we're talking about boarding homes, we're talking about transitional housing of 90 days or less. So right now, there's not a requirement for them to register at all. So you have no way to account for them. So you'd have to, I think, to Councilman DePiero's point, and it's a good one, is that you have to, I think, find some basis to assess, how many, not exactly how many, but to get an idea of how many boarding homes you have in the township. to determine whether or not, this is something that you want to pursue. And, I think that you probably have some resources in town who can probably assist you in that regard.
Okay, part two?
The second part is, I sent a letter to the council, which was some good news. We were victorious in the Baldwin Manor case. That was a very significant legal case that my office had been involved with for quite some time. In that case, Baldwin Manor sued the township, claiming that the township owed it $231,000 and change for reimbursement for garbage collection. They based their case on the Burke v. Cohen case, which is a Supreme Court decision that holds that municipalities have to provide safe and sanitary refuse collection. And at first blush, I think Baldwin Manor thought that they had facts very similar to the Burke v. Cohen case. In that particular case, there was curbside pickup. The township, as you know, has a program that it provides in the same manner to residential and commercial property owners for trash collection in cans at the curb. In the case of Baldwin Manor, that service could not be provided in a safe manner, and the township had offered to make reasonable accommodations to provide the collection on site and was refused by Baldwin Manor, which turned out to be a key fact in the township's favor. The reason why the case was so significant is not because of the $231,000 that was saved, but because of the potential liability to the township of approximately $3 million if we had had an adverse decision, because that decision would have applicability not only to Baldwin Manor, but also to all of the other apartment complexes in Parsippany-Troy Hills. And I can assure you that those owners were watching this case very, very closely. So this was a very significant decision. In addition to that, which I've outlined in my letter of correspondence to you, is that the township would have incurred additional costs of approximately $650,000 per year going forward to provide the kind of service that Baldwin Manor thought that it and other apartment owners were due. So from strictly from a financial perspective, this was a very significant victory for the township. It was won on summary judgment. As I've indicated, most of the counts were disposed of with prejudice, meaning they can't be refiled. But there was one count that was dismissed without prejudice, and that is that a property owner can still take action against the township if it believes that the manner in which the township is providing the service is not in a sanitary and safe way, but they're not going to be eligible for any damages or for reimbursement for any costs. Baldwin Manor has filed, and this is new to you tonight, a motion for what they call reconsideration. Anytime a litigant, loses in court, they have an opportunity to refile with the judge and to say, we want you to reconsider your decision. Motions for reconsideration are typically not granted because the litigant has to meet a high bar. They have to show that the judge made a blatant mistake of fact or a mistake of law. Judge Weisenbeck offered a very lengthy, thoughtful, and in my view, well-reasoned opinion, which I've included in my materials to the council. Whether or not Baldwin Manor decides to appeal or not, I don't know, but my review of Judge Weisenbeck's opinion is that I think that the case is pretty well appeal-proof. So this was good news for the township.
Just a comment, if I may, that correspondence that we got from Mr. Inglesino was very, very welcome news. My compliments to your firm, Mr. Inglesino.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion to open up to the public.
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Grefi, second by Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes, at this time, open up to the public. You'll be given 5 minutes to speak. Please come in, sign in.
Gets lower and lower. Good evening, Roy Mesmer, 10 Drummond Drive. The only council member tonight that really asked the question was Councilman DiPiero, and come up with a number of homes. Let me help you out a little bit.
Just an estimate. I
Well,
don't expect...
but how many dogs aren't registered in Parsippany? I mean, there's no way anybody here tonight, or even in housing, can come up with that number. But I'll help you a little bit, Councilman. We had a meeting at the Parsippany High, and a woman came in and said there was a boarding house right around the corner. I left that evening with one of the council people sitting up here, and we saw about 10 or 12 cars sitting outside that house. Bars were situated in the basement windows. A couple weeks later, at the High also, a group of families came in and spoke about a boarding house, and I think the mayor met with them after the council meeting over off of South Beverwick Road. I could go on and on and on. I could tell you in my neighborhood, when I say my neighborhood, I mean Sedgefield and Glacier Hills, we have 3 or 4. One of which, we used to have 5, and I'm not trying to get mean here tonight, I'm not trying to get nasty here tonight, but I would certainly love to sit down with the mayor, Jasmine, and Mr. Inglesino. And I should have prefaced by saying, and I apologize, John, when I met with Mr. Inglesino and 2 of his associates on July 2nd at 10:30, we had about an hour meeting. They were very well prepared, very well prepared. It was an excellent meeting. Sorry, John, I didn't say that first. But going back to the situation at hand. So I presented this to the council on June 18th. On June 19th, my 2-year-old golden doodle and myself, we hit the streets. I spoke to a number of people. The phone calls that are coming into my house are numerous. Boarding house here, boarding house there, because I told them what I had presented. Mike, I'm not just addressing you, the whole council. I have a whole file set up with SOPs, standard operating procedures, how to implement this, how to comply with this, how to investigate it.
Roy,
And
not to take away
know.
from your 5 minutes, but
No.
let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Are any of these in residential areas, which are supposed to be residential one-family homes?
Yeah. And just so you
Well,
know,
those wouldn't qualify for boarding house anyway. We should get the housing department to clamp down on those. Those should not even be boarding houses.
They should be removed.
well, Mike,
should be removed.
here's the problem.
What-
2 homes up from Mount Tabor Firehouse is a boarding house. 3-4 years ago, when that family bought that house, I called housing. Rena Plax went in there and said there's no occupancy problem. It's a 5 or 6 bedroom house. There are 5 or 6 people living in it. But I've been writing the license plate numbers down. It changes like the wind. At one of my town meetings, and I think the mayor was there 2 years ago, the woman came in complaining, I won't even send my 10-year-old daughter up to get the mail because I don't know who's living next door to me. Mike, we have a lot in this town. When I present, I know you weren't here.
There may not be legitimate boarding houses, though. My point is, how many areas in town do we have that the zoning allows for boarding houses? It can't be many. Most of these have to be illegitimate, and we should be following up to stop the boarding house situation.
You can't turn a one-family house into a boarding house whether they register or not. The people have to be thrown out of the house.
No, I've just said that to you. We had 13 Drumlin Drive, right across the street from me. It might have been one of you 2 guys that came to that house about 5 or 6 years ago with guns drawn to pull out a resident out of that, tenant out of that house who didn't show up to his court case. I'm not saying it was one of you 2, but I remember at the time it was Sergeant Tedesco.
Roy, I don't want to
I know.
interrupt, but before I forget, if you could just hold off. Mike, Mr. DiPiero, even if there is a boarding house, what rules would be in place to say that you can't have it? I mean, what's illegal about having a boarding house other than that they're not paying their occupancy tax?
Well, if they are in a residential area, a single-family residential area, R1, R2, R3, they should not have multiple tenants or families in that residence. That is...
I totally agree with
that
you.
is
Yeah, I
against
don't disagree with you
that's
either,
not
but
the-
are they breaking the rule if they're not violating the occupancy ordinance at the time?
That's been the problem, Mike.
If they're in violation of the
Right.
occupancy
That's-
ordinance, then yeah, then they're in violation of that. But if they're renting out a room to one person, that's clearly not that's not a stacking issue. It's a completely different issue. We're talking about taxing that as a boarding house. So I just don't know what, it's complicated. It's what law are they currently breaking, if any? And I think what Mr. Inglesino was saying, that we would have to change the ordinance to strengthen it in order to recoup the occupancy tax. I guess.
Like I said, Mr. Ingelson's office was very prepared on July 2nd. I have it right in here. I think it's just adds a line or two to the current ordinance, right, John?
Well, again, I think there's two concepts. One is that you would have to include a requirement that boarding homes register with the Division of Housing, just as rental properties have to register with the Division of Housing. The second component to add would be a penalty provision. You know, if they don't register, then there would be a penalty that the township would be able to assess against the property. And we're looking into what the range of penalties could be if you wanted to include a maximum penalty to provide maximum incentive for a boarding home owner to register. Those are the two ordinance enhancements, if you will, that could be made.
You know my concern about this? All right, we have a lot of residents in the town that are struggling to pay taxes and pay expenses, okay? And now they say, hey, geez, if I take in a tenant now, okay, we're making boarding homes legitimate by moving in this direction, and many residents who are hurting financially may want to begin to take in boarders. Are we compounding a problem by moving in this direction?
Well, you can still take them in. The purpose would be that there would be a tax. So if they wanted to rent out a room to somebody, again, we're talking about a time period of less than 90 days, then they would have to pay 3% tax.
I'm not worried about the tax. The tax is small potatoes. What I'm worried about is, are we now saying every residential home in the town can now rent to boarders?
Mike, there's
And
hundreds, there's
supersede our
over
ordinance?
100.
But the question is it illegal for them to do it right now?
It's not.
Right.
They can rent to boarders right now as long as it's not transient. Is that correct, Mr. Inglesino?
I'm sorry, Jasmine, I couldn't hear you.
Couldn't any single-family residential owner rent to a boarder as long as it's not a transient board? If I rented a room for a year, that would be legitimate?
I would have to check your
I'd
code to
I'd
see
like the
from
ordinance
a...
to find that, because I don't believe that's true.
I'd like to say something. Roy, regarding the house off South Beverly, I've been there about 4 times. I did some research. We have to walk a fine line. And what I mean by that, that particular house that you're talking about has 5 bedrooms. We would have to take the ordinance apart, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. It goes to the apartments, and it goes by square feet, footage, right? So if I have 5 bedrooms and 1 bedroom, I could technically have 3 people in 1 bedroom. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm telling you I did research. So when the house has, the family lives there, let's put that right there in place, okay? The family lives there. They could also have 8 more people living there. Because, no, I'm not arguing with you. I'm telling you the law. I went to housing. I'm not arguing with you. You could check it.
I know the law,
Okay,
Vinny, I've
okay,
read it.
so the thing is,
You're missing the whole point.
I'm not missing the
This is a
point.
boarding.
I understand
I
that, but
just told you
before,
example of the
you
house two
mentioned
up
that
from
house.
Torrance.
I'm not
Right.
debating with you. You
Right.
mentioned that house. According to our housing law, it's legal to have that many people there. You said, I went to this house, I'm not saying that house, you went to a house.
I did go to that house.
And you counted 15 license plate, and all I'm telling you, it's legal for them to be there according to our ordinance. Because it by square feet for the
According
apartment.
to the stacking
That's it.
ordinance. Right,
But
but,
it's not stacking according to the
correct.
No, but
people
that-
at town hall that I spoke
Correct.
to.
Right, that's,
That's not my point, Vinny.
Okay.
These are homes, that house, you had 4 families at the high that night. They're transient people. They don't know who's living there. Each week, every other week, there's a different individual in that room. Right, Mayor? They met with you
And
after.
that you can,
That-
that falls into what you're saying.
Right.
Because it's transient.
This situation I brought up, Vinny, on June 18th, had nothing to do with our square footage regulation or ordinance. Understand that? I explained it when I
Roy,
got up
30
here.
seconds.
I know. Thank you for the extra time tonight, Brian. That, I'm talking about what happened, the 2 homes up from Torrance, 2 homes up from the District 1 Firehouse on Route 53. Any other questions? I have other information in here. I would like to sit down with anybody at any time.
Well, maybe, we'll
Okay.
meet.
all right, thanks.
For the record, I'm not opposed to moving forward. I compliment Mr. Mesmer on his efforts. I just have some fringe concerns. I don't believe all residential properties can become boarding houses in our town with the ordinances we have today. I think we need a clear definition of what R1, R2, and R3 define as a residential area. I know years ago, when I was on the Board of Adjustment, and for the years I've been on the Planning Board, every time we got an application for a mother-daughter, you know, the mother's now going to move in with the daughter, and they were going to a separate bathroom and a separate entrance, we always had concerns about making that one-family home a two-family home, you know, when they sell at some point in the future. And in fact, I saw one in Lake Hiawatha for sale like that, two-family house in a one-family zone. So those things happen. But I think we need to understand what R1, R2, and R3 mean and what the law allows and does not allow.
Yeah, it is applicable. We'll look into that, and I also want to confer with Mr. Snykes on that issue as well.
Seeing no one else come forward, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, okay. If you're going to come up, please come up to the front row and have a seat.
Parsippany-Troy, 182 Hawkins Avenue. The occupancy law, truthfully, when it was changed, was really changed incorrectly. You know, you wiped out single-family housing, so, you know, we got to revert back to that because we're screwing up our town with all this stuff. That's number one. Number two is I'd like to ask the council tonight if they have heard anything regarding problems at the No Country Club. I got a few phone calls. I was advised that there were problems at the No Country Club approximately around June 22nd. Firehouse District 1 was renting it. Apparently, there was some mischief, some vandalism is what I heard, some damage. I haven't seen anything about it, so I'm asking. I heard that it was possible that two people were mentioned that was involved. One of them is a town employee, and I'm only saying what I heard, so I'm asking you to investigate the matter. One was a town employee, and I know if it's a town employee that destroys property, township property, axed. We've done it before. I don't know why nothing's been said about this. Why I get phone calls to tell me something's happening in town. I don't understand it. I really don't. If this happened, we should have been, you know, told about it. Does anybody up here know about it? Were the police contacted? Was anybody contacted? Anybody have any info on it?
Do we know if there was a police report filed on this? Anybody? Can we, Yancy, can we
Pat,
find out?
if I could, Council President, if I can answer Pat Patachia's question. Yes, on September 22nd, the Fire District 1 did have an event at the Knoll.
Paula, just for the record, June
June
22nd,
22nd?
not September.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, my God. Where'd I get September? I hope one doesn't occur on September 22nd. No, June 22nd. What had happened, it was reported to me by the superintendent, Glenn Fosell, that some individuals, now keep in mind, where the golf carts are, they're not locked. They had access to where the golf carts were. Apparently, some golf carts were taken out and returned. There was no property damage, no injuries, or no forced entries. Therefore, at that point in time, I deemed it at that time not necessary to make a police report. There was nothing to report. I'm not too sure what you're hearing, Pat, but that's basically the facts of that situation.
Okay, basically, I did hear that it was damage of about $7,000. That's
Nope.
what I was told. So I want to be, and I heard that it was broken into, and even if it wasn't broken into,
Well, what I will tell you,
They're not
Pat-
supposed to be taking stuff.
No, you know what? You're absolutely right. This is property the township rents, and
And we pay
Glenn
for it.
Fosell has taken the measures to contact a lock company, so now those carts are now locked, so you don't have access. Before this incident, you can have access to these carts to the men's locker room, which there was no lock. There is now a lock on that facility. We never had an incident like that, to the best of my knowledge, I should say. I've been here 9 months, so that's what I could speak from. So yes, and just to give you some information with regards, I know you are concerned about the vandalism, $7,000. Those carts are serviced weekly. So I have the weekly reports for June 27th and July 3rd, and the only thing, it's just a maintenance on the carts. A belt was replaced for 50 cents, and that's just general maintenance, really unrelated to the incident. So I'm pleased to report there was no forced entry, injuries, or property damage to the golf carts. But please keep in mind, this is something we are discussing with the fire district, and we have left it in their hands to discuss with their members the type of behavior that took place that night, and we have left them to address the situation. But from the township standpoint, we didn't, we didn't sustain any of the items I had mentioned.
Was there damage to anything on the golf course, or just?
Nope, it was reported to me, no property damage, including the golf course or the carts.
Okay. Were the carts returned to their place, or were they just left out outside?
My understanding is the carts were left out, that's how they knew something happened.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think so.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm glad you're telling me what happened. However, those individuals were on township property, and they went and took carts, whether locked or not. They took carts without permission and took them out. Anybody else that would have done that, the cops would have been called. They would have been called. Don't say they wouldn't have.
I'm
I know
not
they
too
would
sure
have
what
been.
you're referencing, Pat. but
I'm
there
referencing the fact
was
that it's
no
actually,
indication,
you're looking at vandalism as something having
But
to be locked.
there was no vandalism. I'm not too sure what a report would constitute.
How about theft of property?
Nothing was stolen.
Taking the carts out is theft from where they were. Is that not true? I'm
No,
asking.
that's not theft.
All right. If I go to Pat's house at the end of the night and get in her car and drive it around the neighborhood and
It's
then
theft.
return it back to Hawkins Avenue, but I return it and leave it outside her house, but not in her driveway, is that theft?
Well, you've committed trespass in that, you've certainly committed trespass in that instance. I mean, let's not.
Well, it's the same thing. Whoever did this trespassed as well at the
Right, at the no.
30 seconds.
That's my
back.
Right. And it's just, basically, this is what I'm saying. It's just like,
They were at the mall.
you can't keep news down because people call you with it. It doesn't matter. Somebody's got to acknowledge this stuff. This is just getting ridiculous. Thank you.
Good evening, David Kaplan, 263 Intervale. Just confirming that the overlay ordinance will be on the agenda for next week. Is that correct? I guess I addressed the president on this. Okay. Has the ordinance been written yet?
The ordinance.
Written, we have not received a copy as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the law requires that in order to introduce an ordinance, that all you need is the title. The ordinance is probably about 98% written. It is anticipated that the ordinance would be available next week at the time of introduction. But again, the ordinance is not up for a final vote next week. There's a two-part process, actually a three-part
And
process.
that's my next question, so if you want to.
For an ordinance of this type. The first is that the ordinance has to be introduced on first reading. Again, that can be done by title only, without the body of the ordinance. Then the ordinance, as a document, as an ordinance, is referred to the planning board. The planning board has, I think it's 35 days to review the ordinance and to make recommendations with respect to the ordinance and any master plan change or amendment that may be necessitated by the ordinance back to the council so that the governing body would have the input of the planning board. And then at a date set, which I believe is intended to be in September, there would be a public hearing on the ordinance. And that's the time for folks to come out and to express their opinions on the ordinance, because that's, that's where the record, frankly, is formed, at the public hearing. And obviously, the ordinance will be available well in advance of that for folks to review. There has been, as I think you're aware, an interactive process that has been occurring in which your counsel, Mr. Solomon, your planner, Mr. Steck, the developer's attorney and planner have been interacting with the township's planner in regards to comments. We've had meetings to try, as I've indicated in the past, we would, to try and identify issues of concern. There's been at least one site visit that I'm aware of in which the planners went to the site together, which resulted in, as I understand it, some additional modifications of the ordinance. But that's, that's what's occurred, and that's what the process would be going forward.
I appreciate that. Your recommendation was for the public to come out in September. Why would you not recommend we come out next week?
I didn't say that I didn't recommend them to come out next week. What I said is that legally, the record is made at the public hearing, and the public hearing is held in September, okay? In other words, in order for an ordinance to be adopted on second reading, and you've reminded me of a part that I omitted, there has to be a public hearing on the ordinance. That's a legal requirement, and that public hearing will be held in September. And that is, the time of the public hearing on this ordinance. Now, folks are certainly welcome to come to a council meeting, and they're certainly able to address the governing body as you are tonight, but, that's just as part of a general public opportunity to speak. It's not the public hearing on the ordinance. The public hearing on the ordinance will be at a designated time and place. It'll be, provided that the ordinance is introduced, I would envision that it would be at the September regular council meeting.
So the vote next week is to introduce the ordinance.
Yeah, and that's really...
And we're voting on something, it doesn't make sense to me, and I'm sure there's some legal reasons, so you can explain it, obviously. Why would we be voting on an ordinance that we haven't read yet?
Well, because typically what happens, again, it's a two-step process. It is not atypical. Just because somebody votes to introduce an ordinance doesn't mean they support the ordinance. It means that they're voting to introduce it so that it can go through the next phases of the process. With respect to a zone change, that means so that it can then be referred to the planning board for the planning board's input. This ordinance in particular will have a significant amount of input before it comes to the governing body, because there's already a history to this in terms of concept plan hearings, interaction between the planners for the citizens group, for the developer, et cetera. So this ordinance has had a lot of input, but it would still have the input of the planning board, and then, of course, the input of the public at the public hearing. And then at that time, on final passage, then when those votes are cast, that's a vote yes or no to the ordinance. Now, it doesn't mean that folks have to vote yes on introduction, but that's the way that the legislature has set up the process for the passage of a law.
Understood. I heard the timer. Last question. When the ordinance is finally written, will we be notified, or will Mr. Simon be notified so that we can get a look at it?
Yes, it will. First of all, it will be available at the clerk's office for members of the public. I will provide a copy to Mr. Simon, as your counsel. I will provide a copy to the developer's attorney as well, as I've indicated that I would. And the ordinance will be available in the clerk's office. And I would anticipate that If for some reason it's not available next week at the time of introduction, and I fully anticipate that it will be, there will certainly be an announcement next week as to when it will be available at the clerk's office, so the public will have ample opportunity to have access to the proposed ordinance.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Kaplan, just real quick, one of the things that I learned up here this year was that ordinance don't have to be introduced, have to be ready when introduced. Mr. Inglesino says it's a law, it's a law. I don't particularly like it, but for an ordinance that so many people are paying attention, I really ask Mr. Inglesino and the administration to try to have that ordinance available to the council next week when we vote to introduce it. No, you're going to make every effort.
I think I will. I mean, it's really, at this point, I checked on the status of it today. There's literally an issue, and I don't want to say the issues are minor, but there's cleanup work being done by the planner. I fully anticipate that the ordinance will be ready and it will be delivered to the council in advance of introduction.
All right, thank you.
Oh, by the way, Mr. Kaplan, I think Mr. Solomon's on vacation. Simon, I'm sorry, is on vacation. The 16th. Yeah, I think that's right. But that's correct. But he'll have it before then. Mr. Steck will also have it. I don't know whether you interact with him directly or not. But Mr. Steck will also have it, and he'll have it probably before Mr. Simon because he's away. So you should interact with Mr. Steck as well, and he'll be able to provide it to you.
Thank you. Good evening. Ron Owens, 154 Intervale. First of all, council is Rob Simon. Simon.
I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Simon.
I
A couple of times, okay?
Well,
Well, it's only a little detail. I mean, it's only an attorney representing us. I mean, if we are getting careless with names, I hate to think of what else is being careless. I'd like to thank those of you who have come and listened and talked with us. Whether we've agreed or not, the fact that you've shown us the courtesy and the respect is tremendously appreciated. I take exception to the fact that we, our group, the Citizens for Health, Safety, and Welfare, have been portrayed as a bunch of fanatics. I humbly submit that if watching out for our drinking water, our air quality, if it makes us a fanatic, that's a word that is tainted with all kinds of very, very bad connotations. I do take exception to it. I am aware that one of you up there did say it, and I would only say that portraying us as a group of fanatics only is evidence of a feeling of insecurity on your part. Thank you.
See no one else come forward, I'll entertain a motion to close.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Farrar, second by Mr. Karifi. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes, at this time I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session for shared service contract with the Board of Ed and extraordinary unspecified agreement.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Farrar, second by Mr. Karifi. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes, resolution, whereas the Open Public Meeting Act, Public Law 1975, Chapter 231 permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, whereas the Township Council, in the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, whereas the Township Council wishes to discuss attorney-client privileges, contract negotiations, where minutes will be kept, and once the matter involving the confidentiality of the above no longer requires confidentiality, the minutes can be made public. Motion by myself.
Second.
Second by Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi?
Yes.
Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes.
Where do we go?
I think we're going to the back room.
Make a motion to reconvene.
Motion by Mr. Farrar, second by Mr. Karifi. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Karifi.
Second.
Second by Mr. Farrar. Roll call.
Mr. Karifi.
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes, good night, all.
We gotta reach out to